Ch5-9 is a make an original shape, content, whatever you want to call it. So we build this in. I'm going to go ahead and bring in a spacer plate, and I'm just going to go ahead and leave it in that original position. And let's see what we can do with a I'll go with a 3x4. Okay, so then the bracket, go back over to the assembly, insert a component. For the bracket, I'll probably go with a C. And then that can be the position. Go ahead and give it a parallel so it keeps it from rotating. Okay, thought I hit parallel, apparently not. Okay, make sure it has a chance to catch up then. Do the control select, we'll go to the other side, and it's not quite cooperating on that one. Alright, so if we can't get it to cooperate, we'll go ahead and apply it. Alright, so I either need that gap or to rotate around. Probably would have seen it if I'd brought it over. Alright, so 4x3. And then I'll bring in another. And we'll go with the Concentric. Alright, so that's able to rotate and move. So we get the other Concentric in. Now at some point we start thinking about how we're going to put this together if it were not for pins. And so one of the either a tooling plate or what kind of structure I'd want to use for this. So right now with the pins we're going to be able to come both ways, but if I was to put threads on this side, then I would need to be able to go through. And then positional, well, we're going to have a little bit of positional tolerance on that size. Let's go ahead and bring in another bracket. I'm going to switch this one over to a Z-bar. And we'll see if we can get the stack-ups to work. And would like to have a few little changes be able to make along the way. So we'll see what this lines up as. Okay, and then the outsides can stay concentric, or coincident, parallel. Whichever. Okay, so not picking up that one. Alright, so I'm still kind of expecting it to pick up the mate references, but I might be making it too complicated too. Alright, so we need the spacing. Alright, so the front plane is on the back side of the part, so that doesn't help me with the stack up. I was hoping to be able to make a mirror, and in that case I really wouldn't need this other plate, at least right now. So maybe, just maybe, I'll go ahead and suppress that out. We can always reduce the, remove the mates and come back to it. Alright, so if I wanted to mirror all of this over, and there's symmetry and it's not going to be a left and a right part, then I would need to have some reference geometry. There we go. Plane. And thinking about it. Alright, so first reference. Let's see if we can set this up as a mid. And then if I pick the second reference to the outside, then we have a mid plane between the two surfaces, and that would give me something to mirror across. So even though I didn't set it up that way with the planes, we can make it work. Alright, so that gets added to the mix, and if I go over to a mirror components, the mirror plane is the plane that I just created, or if one of these would happen to be convenient, we would stay with that. And then we'll go spacer and the Z. Alright, and then available solutions. On occasion it will shift around. So as it moves things around, I think we're okay. And no, I don't want to create an opposite hand version. So if we needed a left and right, for whatever reason, it would create a derived configuration of that part and apply it. Okay, so the fourth bracket, that one didn't pick up a coincident, even though I thought I got that in there. Or the parallel. Okay, so that one doesn't need to move. And then the spacer plate, if I were to unsuppress that, it's going to be a duplicate. So I need to just go ahead and get rid of its mates. So doing the shift select and then delete on the keyboard. See if the computer can catch up here. And we'll give it a yes to all. Alright, so since they're one on top of the other, I'm going to do a move component. Alright, and then we can stack. Let's see, I'm still in move, so that's not going to help me. Let's see if we have an angle. Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to see, is if I was going to be able to stack these up one way or the other and get back to where I could, let's just go with an L bracket. And it did it to me again. Got to remember to change components. Alright, make sure I've got the correct component selected before I switch over to my L bracket. Alright, so I'm going to line those up. We'll make that concentric. And then I don't really want to set the depth just yet. And I don't think we set up to be the right plane. I don't want to get too complicated. Well, actually, no. I'm going to say I don't want to get too complicated on the planes just yet, so alright, so they were saying 12 pieces. And we're pretty close to there, so even after I've created the mirror, I can go back into that mirror and add the components. So if I want to bring the L brackets in, and we go ahead and accept. And then the question would be, did I line those up to where it's on an even? So about 60 millimeters, that should bring it back up to the plate. Alright, so that being the case, I'm going to make that coincident, which will also make the mirror coincident. Okay, not sure what it had selected there, or if I got ahead of it. I'll go coincident with that one as well. And then this will go over to a triple. Yeah, still not sure what it's picking up there. Alright, so almost like I'm getting some ghost meats in there. Now I got a little bit of a lag on the screen, so those will be coincident. We'll see if my concentric stayed. Alright, so one of them stayed. I'll give it a chance to catch up. Alright, that looks good. Alright, so one more time, coincident. And the recommendation was to do 12 items. And I want this to be at least a little bit complex, so when we do the exploded view, create the drawing, bill of materials, all that kind of stuff, it has some complexity to it. Alright, those are all built up. Don't think anything's going to move. So this is going to be my Ch5-9 SubAssembly. Alright, so as we build this up, then we can add more components. Alright, so what makes a subassembly is that if I made 2 or 3 of these, or different combinations of these, when I bring them up to the next level in the assembly, these become subassemblies. So at this level, it's an own assembly. And as soon as I create the next, and we're going to bring in that item, and then put it to the 0, and then I'll bring in the next one. And I did not make a mate reference on this, so we're just going to line it up. As coincident, and then with the concentric, and then we don't want it to rotate, so those two, and concentric. Alright, so now it's going to become Art Deco. Alright, so every one of these that I bring in, and probably if I'm going to get too complicated with it, the mate reference would be handy. And I lost that surface, so let's go. Okay, so I don't think we're going to go with all the pegs because I just made this way too complicated to go to the 40s as well as all of the 20s and the 30s, and so we'll just stay with the shapes. Alright, so we can keep adding in subs. And so if I go 5-9, assembly. Alright, and then if there was a higher level assembly, we would have to give it a name as well. But it depends on how I'm organizing these. But just for an example, this becomes a subassembly, and as each of these changes or has different components added to it, then they naturally get more complicated. So as we keep bringing these in, at some point it's going to be a test of the processor as to how well it can manage it. Alright, so if I get enough of these, then at some point I'll want to consider another pattern. And so the linear component pattern, we need to pick up a direction and a distance, probably in the 100 120 range. And the items, just make sure everything's selected. We have the edge, and as soon as we go more than one, we're going to be able to stack those up. And then the other distance, I'm not quite sure of, but we will figure it out. Alright, so it needs to I'm not sure why it turned the other way. I haven't Alright, got a little button happy, or computer is still struggling. Alright, so edge 2 is going to be 3 units that way, and that one's probably going to be on the order of 200 and some odd millimeters. And if I hit the tab, it's going to update. So another 20. Alright, so I can make these as complex as I want. And they're going to get really busy, and it's going to take up a lot of resources to run it, especially when we do the hard edges. So it looks pretty cool, but I don't really need that one. So, and it just switched over to large assembly mode, which means that we're over 200 or 500 parts, so it's not going to resolve everything if it doesn't need to. So let's not save that one. And I really am not that interested in this higher level assembly, other than if we want to create an exploded view of it, we have the choice of just doing the sub-assemblies, the 3 components, or we go back to this level and we make our exploded view here. Alright, so under the configuration is where the exploded view will end up living, and we want to actually initiate it. So the things that need to go up, we have a chain 1, and right now we're set to auto space the components, so I do like to try and check that one first, and then this is the relative position between them. So for this, in chain 1, I'm going to pick up our components, trying to make sure I'm not grabbing the arrows. Doing a pretty good job of picking the other things over. There we go. Alright, so if I drag that out, then that gives me the spacing, and it picks up the brackets, picks up the chain, and then if I auto drag the spacing, I can move them up and out a little bit. And we still have the arrows, so I don't want to get too carried away. If it'll let me, nope, it's just part of the mix. Alright, so we'll call that one done. Oh, and then it shifted on me. So distance, let's go up 80 millimeters and a little shift, and it is in the Y direction, 80 millimeters. So, alright, and then if we need to, we can close up or work a little bit on those. Alright, so the individual pieces then, since I'm not going to auto drag, we'll just go with, be careful of the rings, because those will allow the component to rotate. Oh, pick that one up. I should have clicked to done. So let's undo that one, and we'll give it a distance of 100 millimeters. I kind of like the symmetry. And done. Okay, and then a few more components. Maybe we'll take these two and pull them out of the mix. I don't know that I'm making it better at this point, so maybe 80 millimeters that way, and done. Alright, so nice thing is that even if I get this not looking great, I can always add another and use this as a base reference for my first try at it. Okay, so let's see what it looks like under trimetric. Not that great. And then dimetric. That's not too bad. A little bit of clutter in there, but it's decipherable. That one got away a little bit. Alright, so at this point I'm not too interested in the jog lines. When we look at this, we have the exploded view, we have each of the chains, and if we did decide to put in exploded line sketch, then the items to connect, we're going to need route lines between each of the stages. And I'm going to turn off the XYZ, which usually will keep it going linear. And then we accept. And that creates the 3D explode. Alright, so if I go back and we look to edit, I'm still in the explode. So we can either go with a center line, and if I pick up a center point, this is going to act as a 3D sketch, so I can see that that floating origin, and we'll just go point to point. Alright, and I'll give it some definition. Alright, and then if we were to do these, we would have to jog. So if I go back, let's see if it'll let me back into... So it still thinks we're in the exploded line sketch. So pick up the center line. I like my chances of building that out. So a direction, and then we'll come down a little ways. And then you need to pick up to that center line of the bore. And if I make that along my Z, then that should bring it back to having those jog lines. Alright, so I don't want to get too crazy with the jog lines, but that gives you kind of a sense of how it's created. Alright, so we accept the exploded line sketch. We rebuild, make sure everything's up to date, and then we'll make sure to save this. Alright, at the next level, if I needed it, and one of the reasons I created this was, we got a little bit of extra in there. So one of these came over. Which one? Alright, so right now we have the default, we have the exploded view, and neither one of these should have picked up that exploded view sketch. And this is the piece. So that pretty much looks like it. Let's go into the component properties. Set to rigid. Have the display state and the default. And I don't see it picking up the exploded state on that one because everything should be able to collapse. And we haven't created an exploded view on this one. Alright, so we'll jump back. I'm just toggling back and forth in the window, and if I double click, that collapses. And that one stayed. Interesting. Wonder if it has to do with the whole mirroring thing. Alright. That's pretty wild. Alright, so I've got some diagnosing to do. The top spacer plate is showing as underdefined, so worst case is it can rotate, which shouldn't have lost too much there. Alright, well I don't want to spend that much time diagnosing this with the pieces. So, we'll edit, make sure everything's there, we'll look at the preview. Yeah, something in the mirror, it didn't update or it didn't process, so let's go ahead and save it. We'll come back to the assembly. And then if I create an exploded view, this will get kind of messy. Okay, so that's what I was looking to check in the properties, is that it wasn't already set. So if I create an exploded view, then there should be reuse the SubAssembly explodes, and the SubAssembly component. Let's go with the second one there, because at least that won't get too messy, hopefully. And we'll accept it. Alright, so we have that one selected, reuse, there it goes. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, so we have the exploded view that is just the one on top of the others. And you can see how that could get real busy and very abstract if we went through all of them. So double click, it comes back, we save, and then you can go through. So if I wanted to add to that mix, maybe I only want to explode, so let's double click or right click and explode. We'll go back in and edit the feature. And then the next item, I'll just grab the third one and we'll pull it out a little ways so it has some separation. Alright, so if I want to detail, if that helps with my visual, then that gets me where I need to go. I don't have to do all of them, but I can show the individual and then collapse them back. Alright, so the takeaway then is that we don't need a separate file for the explode and the assembly. They are one and the same, and when we take this over into the drawing, we will activate the explode in the drawing view and make our detail, our bill of materials, whatever we need from this shape.